जी वसीम साहब, आप डिस्कस कर रहे थे कि साइको सोशल फैक्टर्स, व्हाट आर द साइको सोशल फैक्टर्स which cause suicides in our society, which are because of which suicides are on an increase in the society.
As I told you earlier that parenting practices need to be updated. Parenting practices are becoming one of the major reasons for invalidation of emotions among youth, among child and adolescent population. uh, Parents do not understand how to validate the emotions of the child, how to validate the emotions of an adolescent. Parents are falling behind in understanding the challenge that a child or an adolescent is facing in current times,
So do
and
you
because
think,
of which
Mr. Wasim, do you think there's an identity crisis among our children as well as our youth? If they say, most of them say that our parents do not understand us, what we are trying to tell them. There is a gap between parents and children,
yes,
a communication gap. So, do you
i
think this
i am
identity crisis
completely
is the cause of
i am
suicides?
com- I'm completely sure about this being one of the contributory factors. I cannot say that this is the only contributory factor, but this is one of the contributory factors behind frustration, behind increase in frustration level among child and adolescent population, especially talking of adolescents. Adolescents are not able to convey their message to the parents effectively, and parents are not able to handle the issues of the child and adolescent population effectively, because of which the emotions remain invalidated right from the beginning, right from the childhood. And then there can be like we call them adverse childhood experiences. It includes childhood neglect, childhood emotional neglect. It includes emotional abuse, it includes physical abuse, it includes sexual abuse, it includes problems in the friendships right from childhood. It may also, the contributory factor may be bullying experiences in the childhood or adolescence, at school or somewhere in the neighborhood. It can also lead to somebody is committing suicide. Similarly, the various mental health issues, if they remain unattended, for example, if some child was developing depression or anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder or many such mental health issues, and if those mental health issues are not dealt with in the very beginning, then they may turn into something that is too severe to handle for the child or an adolescent. Similarly, if a child has adverse childhood experiences, there are many more chances of him or her developing personality disorders. And borderline personality disorder is one of the it's seen to be one of the strongest kind of one of the main reasons or for somebody's impulsivity. Border sorry Youth with borderline personality disorder have a tendency to self harm, and sometimes this self harm turns into suicide itself, because the impulsivity was so high that they could not handle themselves. Usually people with borderline personality disorder do not have this basically idea of killing themselves, but they sometimes become so impulsive because of the situation that it turns into suicide. So
So,
that personality disorder had roots there in the childhood. Adverse childhood experiences brought personality disorder in that person's life, and then that borderline personality disorder can lead to somebody is committing suicide. So that's how trajectory goes basically. So again, I would say that the parenting practices, the caregivers attention, emotional attention to the child and adolescent population need to be recalibrated. They don't understand how to handle the emotions of the child. With the result, it can lead to somebody's attempting or committing suicide. Had a financial loss, it's not that easy to say. They are only triggering factors.
right.
Our society usually focuses on the triggering factors. They are not focused on what brought those predispositions in the person's life. We focus mostly on only the triggering factors. Unless and until you do not have predispositions towards suicide, triggers cannot be effective. When
So
you
in a
have
very,
predispositions,
so
when you
in a
have
very,
predispositions, then only triggers can lead to
if I
somebody's
if I put
committed
it
or
in a very easy manner, these Suicides are basically temperamental issues. Is it related to the temperament? Is it specific to certain
Yes,
temperament?
yes. As I told you
What kind
earlier,
of temperament?
suicide.
What kind of
As I
temperament?
told you, as I told you earlier, suicide is a biopsychosocial problem. It builds temperaments. As I told you earlier, that adverse childhood experiences basically shape the personality of a person. It leads to a person having difficult temperament. The child becomes, or the adolescent becomes difficult to handle. And if those difficulties in handling the child is they are not attended or they are not resolved, then it enters into the personality of the child. The child becomes unruly, the child becomes impulsive, the adolescent becomes irritable quite easily. The adolescent may become may feel provoked on slightest provocations. Such type of temperament gets usually built by adverse childhood experiences. And when this child has this kind of temperament, where he is very impulsive, where he is not able to handle his or her emotions, and usually the self harm incidences are the examples of somebody having difficulties in handling the emotions. When you see somebody doing self harm, and if you are ignoring or neglecting those incidences, chances are that such people may turn suicidal afterwards,
So
like after
it's
some
in a
time.
way, it's lack of willpower in a person that leads that person to a suicide.
I will not use this word willpower, because as I told you earlier, suicide is not a simple thing. Suicide is not a simple thing. It's a biopsychosocial issue. Society needs to understand that it's not just a moral issue. It's a biopsychosocial issue.
Just elaborate on this biopsychosocial
Biopsychosocial
very
issue.
briefly, very briefly.
It has biological. As Junaid sir also discussed that there are brain chemicals, and if there are deviations in the brain chemicals, it can lead to somebody's impulsivity. So it's a biological issue, for example. Or similarly, if a person had a chronic biological some physical disorder, for example, the person has had cancer, or somebody had some other chronic health issue, it can lead to somebody committing suicide or attempting suicide. Then there are psychological factors. As I told you earlier, adverse childhood experiences can lead to somebody's poor self-esteem. This is a psychological factor. Adverse childhood experiences can lead to somebody's poor impulse control. It's a psychological factor. Similarly, if there has been a lot of disturbances in the home environment since childhood, it's a social factor. And if now the child or adolescent is not able to relate easily with other people, is not able to communicate effectively with other people, it's a social issue. And if the adverse childhood experiences, or if the domestic violence or hostile home environment still continues in the adolescent's life, for example, it's a social factor. So if all these things continuously like contribute to somebody's impulsivity, it can lead to somebody's committing suicide. So there are predispositions, there are triggering factors, and then there are maintaining factors also. So impulsivity can be maintained.
Allow me to ask you the next
Sure.
question. We'll be brief with all these questions now. Mr. Vasim, what is psychotherapy? What is the approach of psychotherapy?
See, as Dr. Junaid Saab told you that usually mental health issues are effectively dealt with by using two types of approach. One is pharmacotherapy, another is psychotherapy. Pharmacotherapy is basically providing medical help to the person who is battling with some depression or anxiety issue, or who has suicidal tendencies. Then there is another part of the treatment, that is psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is usually provided by a licensed clinical psychologist. A clinical psychologist reads the history, understands the history of the person, and then prepares a treatment plan based on what what issues he or she has found in somebody's life. Based on the case formulation, the professional clinical psychologist develops a case formulation about a person's mental health issue. He looks into the predispositions, he looks into the triggering factors, he looks into the maintaining factors, and then he accordingly develops a treatment plan. And this treatment plan is then like implemented in the sessions. And usually as therapists, we have basically different types of treatment plans. We call them psychotherapies. This treatment plan is basically psychotherapy. Through these treatment plans, where we try to basically reshape the cognitions or thinking of the person, we try to reshape the home environment of the person, we try to psycho educate the family members of the person, we try to build the basically the coping strategies of the person, so that he does not fall prey to negative coping strategies such as substance abuse, or such as even suicide. Because if a person is suicidal, that means the person feels that he does not have or she does not have enough coping strategies available to him to deal with the situation.
The coping strategies later, Mr. Wasim. Mr. Wasim, it has been observed in some cases that as soon as the psychotherapy stops of a suicidal person, he relapses just like the drug addict. He relapses, and there are high chances of him attempting a suicide, his or her attempting a suicide. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe in that. To me, if a person is put on pharmacotherapy and psychotherapy at the same time for quite a long time, depending on the severity of the underlying mental health issues also, and if the person then works upon those things, if the therapist works on the psychosocial issues of the person, and if the person is being basically if the person's coping strategies are built, for example, then there are lesser chances of him or her relapsing. Since suicide is a biopsychosocial issue, if all the biological, psychological, and social factors are being dealt with, if the family members understand how to basically deal with the emotions of the person, then, and at the same time, if there might be many social factors at the same time responsible for somebody's impulsivity. For example, if the person has lost the job, it cannot be handled by the therapist, it has to be handled by the person or the person's family members. A therapist cannot give job to a person who has lost his job. A person cannot bring somebody back in the person's life if that person is dead, for example, or a person cannot.
What you are speaking of is obstacle building in the mind. We build obstacles. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't get the job. Nothing is going on smoothly in my life. So I must end my life.
Exactly.
So this obstacle building in the mind should go. A person must have a positive approach towards life and should not build these mythical obstacles in his mind. Is that what you are trying to say? Briefly.
I do not say that these are mythical obstacles. They can be very genuine obstacles in the person's life. But our role as a therapist is not to give him that job. Our role as a therapist is to help him or her in handling the distressful situation. Building his resilience about the situation, because you might see that many other people also lose job, but they do not commit suicide or attempt suicide because they are emotionally resilient to handle the situation. Our job as therapists is to make that person resilient enough to deal with the situation of losing the job, or of losing the relationship, or of having some physical illness, for example. Yes.
Mr. Wasim. Mr. Wasim, there is depression among the children.
I'm not.
There's depression among the children also. There are rising cases of depression among the children. Many children complain about depression. Do you think this nerve-wracking competition that we have, the child has got to be the best? The parents are always on toes to project their child as the most perfect and the best child in competition, in class, in co-curricular activities. Do you think somewhere this is also a pointing factor for suicide in adolescents?
Yes,
and builds
yes,
more
definitely.
suicidal
As I
tendencies,
started,
builds that stress.
as I start as I started my talk with this, my response to your questions with this thing that the parenting practices in our valley are very very rudimentary, I would say. They are not updated unless and until our parents do not understand how to handle the challenge to child and adolescent population. It will definitely lead to, it can definitely lead to any type of mental health issue, be it depression, be it anxiety, or be it suicidal ideation and then suicide attempt or suicide completion, committing suicide. Because parents need to understand that this particular age, pointing towards, I'm talking of adolescents. This particular age, like children in this particular age, are naturally impulsive. Like any be it any healthy like adolescent, he or she is naturally impulsive. And if you are pressing upon the child to be perfect, or pressing upon the child to excel in all the fields, and invalidating the problems that that child or adolescent is facing, without looking into the issues that are causing some failures, or without looking into the issues that are causing the basically poor performance in the person's life, uh, it can lead to invalidation of emotions. For example, if I have a learning disability, for example, if I have ADHD, and if I am not able to remember things well, and if my parents are expecting me to do well in my studies without understanding what causes are behind my poor performance in my studies, it can lead to invalidation of emotions and invalidation of all those challenges that that child is facing. And finally that child may feel that my parents are not able to understand my situation. So this rat race needs to go away. Basically, every child needs to be understood individually, without comparing him to somebody else. This comparison is all again a very bad way of parenting. Like our parents compare their children with somebody else's children, or their cousins, or their relatives, or their classmates. Comparison cannot be a healthy exercise. Comparison only builds more guilt in the child. Comparison only gives more dent and more damage to the person's to the child's self esteem and self confidence.
Absolutely.
Parents think that if they compare parents feel that if they compare their child with somebody else, then this child will think about his performance, and then this child will start performing better. But unfortunately that's not the case. Comparison only builds more frustration, it builds more resentment, it builds more hatred, and then we lose such children to different types of mental health issues such as depression and anxiety.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Very nicely put it before the parents. I hope everyone gets the point. I would rather suggest that parents make their children a best version of themselves rather than a best version
Exactly,
of people
exactly,
around them.
exactly.
So, Mr. Wasim, we talked about ADHD. So do you think that this impulsiveness and aggressiveness in children looks very normal, even though these are symptoms of ADHD? But do you think somewhere it is the lacking of parental discipline also? Where do we draw the line between this hyper impulsiveness, which is normal in children, and the impulsiveness which ADHD reflects, which is symptomatic of a mental health issue? Where should we draw the
See,
line?
see, any type of mental health issue is not a mental health issue unless it does not affect your psychosocial functioning, your academics, your relations, your quality of life. Unless and until any type of issue does not affect your daily life, your academics, your studies, your relations with other people, your enjoyment of life, it cannot be considered as a mental health issue. ADHD is considered a mental health issue only when a person has so much of inattention that he is not able to retain whatever he or she is studying or trying to learn. He or she loses things quite often. and the person is not able to sit at one place and able to attend to class, for example. Usually we expect a child to attend to class for at least half an hour. A child with ADHD may not be able to sit at one place for more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes. 10 minutes is a huge thing for a child with ADHD. So this kind of hyperactivity is not average hyperactivity of children and adolescent population. Usually they are very fidgety, usually they are not able to sit at one place, usually they are very impulsive, usually they lose things quite often, usually they have an urge to butt into conversations, usually they speak before they listen the whole question, they are very impulsive, usually. Sorry?
They are disruptive. They are destructive in nature. They disrupt things.
They can be disruptive. Exactly, they can be disruptive. And if ADHD is not dealt with in the very early days of its development or very early time of its development, then ADHD can lead to, for example, oppositional defiant disorder, in which the child starts opposing the parental commands. And if ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, is again not dealt with effectively, then it can lead to conduct disorder, where the child becomes very unruly, he steals things impulsively, he lies quite often about things, he can steal things, he can set things on fire. It can lead to that means untreated ADHD sometimes can lead to conduct disorder. And if that conduct disorder is again not treated effectively, then it can enter into the person's personality, and we call that person having antisocial personality disorder. So there's a trajectory, there's a path from untreated ADHD to somebody developing antisocial personality disorder. And people like children with ADHD have a tendency to go for substance abuse, because again that impulsivity, that sensation seeking behavior that is quite common in ADHD children, it can lead to experiencing new things such as drugs, for example.
So
if ADHD is not
towards suicide, that in a way projects them towards, propels them on the path of suicide.
Exactly. If ADHD is not treated effectively, it can lead to loss of impulse control to such a level where the person may, for example, attempt suicide. So such things, if such things are dealt with in the very early childhood or adolescence, chances are there that the child may not commit or attempt suicide.
Okay,
later.
Mr. Wasim, what you talked about coping therapies, coping mechanisms. Will you please elaborate on these coping mechanisms?
See,
what are the
coping mechanisms?
Are they different for
coping mechanisms are the ways through which.
Are they different for young? Are they these coping mechanisms different for young children and adolescents and youth? There is a categorization of coping mechanisms.
See, coping mechanisms are usually based on developmental level. Like child will have different coping mechanism, adolescent will have different coping mechanism, and an adult, a young adult will have different coping mechanism. Coping mechanisms are the ways through which you try to deal with the distressful situation. Then there are two types of coping mechanisms. One is positive coping mechanism, another is negative coping mechanism. Positive coping mechanism is if you feel distressed, you talk to your family member. This is positive coping mechanism. If you feel distressed, you go for a walk. If you feel distressed, you channelize it in some game, for example, football or something else. If you feel distressed, you watch a movie. If you feel distressed, you write about it, for example. These are different coping mechanisms, positive coping mechanisms, through which you can deal with the situation effectively. Then there are negative coping mechanisms, such as taking drugs, such as harming yourself, self-harm. We call it deliberate self-harm. People who do deliberate self-harm, they are not doing it to hurt themselves. They usually do it to handle their emotions, because they don't know any other way of dealing with their emotions. So deliberate self-harm is again a coping mechanism, but a negative coping mechanism. Similarly,
if I may intervene you, Mr. Wasim, I have seen an instance where a girl, she used to cut with the blade on her
Yes,
arm.
yes, yes,
But
yes,
that
yes, yes,
and
yes.
she used to she was, I think she was addicted to pain, and
Yes, it,
this is
they
something.
use they are not usually addicted to pain. Basically, what happens when you harm yourself, when you put a cut on your body anywhere, for example, on your wrist or on your arm, it basically releases few chemicals in your mind called endorphins. Endorphins are basically they give you a sense of relief. That's why you call them, they are addicted to pain, because when they put a cut on their arm, for example, or somewhere on their body, it leads to the release of these chemicals called endorphins, and that endorphin basically is quite relaxing usually. And since they also do self harm, deliberate self harm, such as marking, such as putting cuts on their arms, because they are not able to handle their emotional pain. They try to distract away from their emotional pain and try to focus more on their physical pain usually.
Like you
So
suggested.
it usually it usually happens because they have not been able to understand how to deal with their emotional pain, and that not being able to handle their emotional pain is because possibility is that their childhood had lot of adverse childhood experiences through which they could not understand how to deal with the emotions. And in today's time, they feel themselves inapt to deal with the emotional pain. That's why they prefer physical pain over their emotional pain.
Is there any behavioral therapy which can increase the tolerance level of a person? Tolerance to pain.
Sorry, can you repeat
Is
the
there
question?
any behavioral therapy by which tolerance level of a person can be increased? Tolerance of pain, tolerance of these
Yes.
of a sad
No,
environment, of these happenings that are going
definitely
around.
there are different there are definitely there are different types of psychotherapies that we employ to help a child or an adolescent to deal with for example, distress that can lead to somebody's attempting suicide. Usually we employ for example, dialectical behavioral therapy, in which we teach or we help our client or our patient to know, to understand how to deal with the distress, how to deal with the emergency situations, so that the child or adolescent is able to deal with the emergency situation, is able to deal with the distressful situation. Then we help the child to kind of regulate the emotions through different types of tools and techniques. We teach, we basically help a child or an adolescent in handling the emotions, in handling the distress. There are lot of psychotherapies available for such things, definitely. But usually psychotherapy takes more time than medicine, and for which the child or the client and his family members have to bear it. Like they have to be patient enough before psychotherapy shows its effect. It's not like medicine, like it does not psychotherapies do not act very quickly as medicines act. That's why if somebody is suicidal, usually we usually start with pharmacotherapy, because psychotherapy takes time to have its effect on the person's life, on the person's mind, because it's not some jadoo tona or some mantra will not be just given to
And
that person,
an
and
important
that person will.
an important point made by you, Mr. Wasim, because in our, we are very traditional people, and in our culture, these factors have always been there, and they continue to
Exactly,
be there.
exactly,
And we need to forget
exactly,
these. We need to take
exactly.
medical expertise into
Unlearn,
consideration.
we need to
Unlearn,
unlearn certain
right,
cultural things.
right.
We feel that things should go away just in a jiffy, like
Hmm.
बस पल भर में सब चीजें ठीक होनी चाहिए. It does not happen like that.
Okay,
It takes
Mr.
time. The
Okay,
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
Wasim, I'll ask you another question. Why do we see a treatment gap? Are people reluctant to acknowledge these mental health issues? They don't talk about these mental health issues that lead to these suicides later on.
See,
Is that are these
because
reasons
because
unaddressed?
because mental health issues have a taboo attached to them. And because we have various cultural explanations and religious explanations to various mental health issues, we usually explain it through somebody's like evil eye, जिसको हम उर्दू में बदनजरी कहते हैं, or somebody is doing some black magic, or somebody doing some mystical things, or it's considered to be somebody's effect of somebody's sin. For example, this person has been sinful, that's why he is depressed. Usually because of these explanations, because of these religio-cultural explanations, such issues remain untreated, unaddressed in our society. And because this like if somebody has some physical ailment, then we talk about that physical ailment without any hesitation. Somebody has diabetes, somebody has kidney issues, somebody has problems with the heart, then we talk about such issues without any hesitation. But if somebody has some mental health issues such as depression or anxiety or any such thing, our society does not allow, like our society has lot of resistance against discussing it in the reservations against discussing it in the public sphere. That's why such issues remain untreated for quite a long time. And when somebody's depression, anxiety, or any such type of mental health issue remains unaddressed for quite a long time, it can definitely lead to somebody attempting suicide.
Okay, Mr. Wasim, let me ask you another question. What more do we need to do to make mental health a reality in Kashmir? There's a lot of awareness. Enhance is working, SMHS is working, doctors are working round the clock. And in this pandemic, it really took us the pandemic to realize that mental health issues actually exist. What in your suggestion? What would your suggestions be to make mental health a reality in Kashmir?
See, as I told you earlier, that the way we have medical first aid available at our homes, similarly we should have mental health first aid available at homes. We should understand our society needs to put effort and in understanding the signs and symptoms of various mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, ADHD, conduct disorder, various personality disorders. Because if a commoner understands the basics, at least the basics of many of these major mental health issues, then there are chances that such issues can be spotted and identified in the very beginning, and it can definitely lead to relief from such issues before they can turn into something very serious. So mental health first aid is the way forward, number one. Number two, parenting practices need to be reconsidered, they need to be updated. Parents need to leave their egos aside and need to understand that they need to update their parenting practices. Parenting practices are becoming one of the major contributory factors to various mental health issues in Kashmir. I will repeat it hundreds of times. Parenting practices need to be updated. Similarly, religious scholars, they need to come closer to mental health professionals in understanding what their role can be, because religious scholars have a huge fan following. They have lot of followers, more than anybody else in our society. If they are able to understand, if religious scholars are able to understand the various mental health issues, then they can become sources of referral for such issues, and such issues can be addressed at a proper time. Otherwise, if they remain engaged with their own understanding of various mental health issues, then it can lead to somebody getting consumed by some mental health issue unnecessarily.
Right, Mr. Wasim. I would like to ask you further, because you are practically in the field. Is there a particular suicide prevention helpline?
IMHANS, I personally do not remember any such helpline from IMHANS. Maybe I may be mistaken, but there was some.
There is many helplines.
There might be some helpline, but
there is no suicide prevention helpline particular. where one could phone in
Yes,
and
yes,
communicate that
yes.
this person is
I,
about.
I, 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 I don't remember. I don't remember of. I am not able to recall any such helpline from hospital itself.
So you
I may
would
be
suggest that
mistaken, but
there
I don't
should
know.
exist. So you and I would
There
suggest that
should be
there should
people.
exist
People might be.
such as
Yes,
this
yes,
suicide
definitely there
prevention
should.
helpline.
Definitely,
Okay,
definitely
Mr.
there should
Wasim,
be a 24/7.
we have.
There definitely there should be a 24/7 round the clock helpline for suicide cases, but people might be working on them. I hope they might be working on it, in developing it.
Okay, Mr. Wasim. You are in the field. We have national rural health missions or health missions in general, as we may say. They work in urban areas also. Do they think they can contribute in making the people aware of these mental health issues? Because lately we have seen that
Definitely.
suicide cases that came up, they were from the rural areas itself. Do you think
Exactly.
they could play a
Definitely.
significant
Definitely.
role in awareness?
See, IMHANS is a tertiary hospital, tertiary facility. People should have been addressing such things at the very basic level, at the very various district hospitals. And I feel that they are equipped, the general physicians and the other people who are working at various district hospitals through schemes such as National Health Mission, for example. They should be, I think they should be equipped well to deal with such cases, so that such cases need not to be dealt with at the tertiary level. They need to be dealt with at the very primary level, and people at the primary level should have an understanding of how to deal with such crises.
Right. Mr. Wasim, one further question before we start concluding our discussion. I'd like to ask you, should this mental health awareness be also included in the school curriculum? Because we see our children
Definitely.
are very much
Very
working
good
very
question.
hard to cope up with the stress, especially
Very
during
good question.
COVID
Very
times.
Exactly. Very good question. Very good question. Emotional intelligence needs to be pressed upon, and the way we focus on IQ, the way we focus on a child's or an adolescent's IQ, I think we need to focus more on a child or adolescent's EQ. EQ is emotional quotient. EQ is related to a child's emotional intelligence. If a child has a particular IQ, it cannot be changed afterwards, like once he is a grown up. But if a child has problems in EQ, that is emotional intelligence, it always has a chance to improve. Like there's always a chance to improve upon the emotional intelligence or the EQ of a child. If parents and teachers and mental health professionals work with that particular child, for example, that child's or adolescent's EQ can be improved. EQ is about how to handle the distress. EQ is about emotional quotient, is about how to handle aggression, how to handle anger, how to communicate effectively. EQ is about how to have better interpersonal relations. EQ is about how to have better self-esteem, self-confidence, self-efficacy. All these things are about EQ, basically. If such things, if we teach people at a very primary level how to handle their emotions, how to handle their distress, what can be the various positive coping strategies to deal with the distress in the very primary education. If it becomes the part of the primary education, it can definitely lead to less occurrence of mental health issues in the child and adolescent population. But unfortunately, we mostly focus on the IQ of the child, and that's a very unfortunate thing. EQ needs to be focused upon. EQ needs to be focused upon. Yes,
That is true. Our children are very, very good in studies, but emotionally they are very, very weak. I've seen it in among
very
children.
poor.
Children, we are children. All children are sensitive children, and especially of this digital age where they understand everything before you have even said it. They are very media savvy, and that's the reason, because we as parents or we as a society have not been able to hold on to this emotional intelligence, emotional well-being of our children. That is the very
Exactly.
pertinent point, pertinent reason that our children are propelled towards suicide. Would that be right, Mr.
Yes.
Wasim? Would you agree?
Yes. Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you very
Definitely.
much.
Completely. I do agree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wasim. One more last question pertaining to children. After that, we will come to it. कि हम बच्चा सा अंदरुमल, जिनको हम कुछ बच्चों को हम इंट्रोवर्ट्स कहते हैं, कश्मीरी में अंदरुमल कहते हैं. ऐसे बच्चे जनरली कम्युनिकेट नहीं करते अपने पेरेंट्स को अगर कोई इशू है भी उनके साथ. What would you suggest to their parents?
If the parents are not able to handle the if the parents are not able to handle such children, and if they feel that there's a lot of communication gap between them and their child, they can very well take the child to a mental health professional such as a clinical psychologist. The clinical psychologist knows how to open up the child. The clinical psychologist knows how to make the child more skillful in terms of social relations, make the child more skillful in terms of effective communication. If the parents are not able to handle the communication gap, then they very well can turn to a mental health professional. But if they are able to open up the child because they know their child well, and they are able to understand the likes and dislikes of the child, being introvert is not unhealthy. Being introvert is not a mental health issue, but it can lead to mental health issues. Because if you are not able to express your emotions quite easily with the other person, it can the emotions can remain unaddressed, and it can lead to somebody's developing some mental health issue. That's why I said that such parents need to refer their child, or maybe like consult a clinical psychologist, for example, so that they are able to understand how they can have an effective communication with their child.
Mr. Wasim, it was a very, very fruitful discussion to have you in the discussion. It's our privilege and our honor to have Dr. Junaid as well as you. We had a very long discussion on this topic, and we hope that we'll take these discussions of awareness further in the course of
Inshallah.
I seek
Inshallah.
your
I feel as a mental health professional, I feel privileged to have such communications between us as mental health professionals and commoners and people who are working on ground, because such communications, such interactions, such intellectual interactions need to be there in order to reduce the gap between us and common people, basically.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wasim. Last note, I would say कि जिंदगी जिंदा दिली का नाम है, मुर्दा दिल क्या खाक जिया करते हैं, जिंदा दिल रही अपनी एग्जिस्टेंस को, अपने वजूद को जावेदां कीजिए. जब तक आप अपने वजूद को जावेदां नहीं करते, अपने अंदर वो सलाहियत पैदा नहीं करते कि आप हर चीज को एक पॉजिटिव नजरिए से देखें, तब तक आप एक खुशहाल जिंदगी नहीं जी सकते हैं. With that note, I will like to end the meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Wasim.
Thank you very much. Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.